Is it possible to know your business so well that you stop seeing parts of it clearly? I think it is. And I think this is one of the more interesting challenges of being an experienced business owner. Because after years of running a business, you know an enormous amount about it. You know the history. You know why certain decisions were made, what worked, what didn't. You know your clients. You know your offers. You know all the little details that someone looking from the outside could never possibly know. And yet, sometimes all of that knowledge can make it harder to see what's actually happening. There's an interesting difference between knowing something and seeing something. You can know your business extremely well and still have difficulty seeing the patterns inside because we're not observing our business from a distance. We're living it. We're inside of it every day. We make decisions every day, responding to clients, solving problems, creating things. We're thinking about revenue and marketing and what needs our attention next. And while doing all of that, we're also carrying the history of our business with us. We remember why we created that offer. We remember the client that asked for a particular service. We remember when a marketing strategy worked beautifully, and we remember when one didn't. We remember how much we have invested in building our business, and that history matters. But sometimes that history also influences what we can see clearly today. Because once we understand why something is there, we don't always stop to ask whether it should still be there. We explain it away instead. Well, I created that because, or I started doing this when, I've always, that's one of my favorites. Those explanations may be completely true, but they answer a very different question. They tell us why something still exists. They don't necessarily tell us whether it still makes sense to have that as part of our business now. And I think that's when proximity becomes interesting. When you're close to something, you see all of the details. But sometimes you lose sight of the full picture, of the pattern those details are creating. It's a little like looking at a photograph 2 inches from your nose. You can see every single detail, but you can't see the entire picture. In order to see the entire picture, to grasp all of the patterns, you need to step away, get some distance from it. That's when it becomes clearer. Businesses are like that. We may be looking so close at individual issues that you don't realize there could in fact be a connection. Maybe you're frustrated with your marketing, and separately you're feeling less enthusiastic about one of your offers. And somewhere else you might be spending more time than you'd like on a particular project. Perhaps also you're finding it difficult to decide what idea deserves your attention next. Now, each one of those looks like its own separate issue. And so naturally, we try to solve them individually. We look for a marketing solution. We adjust the offer. We might try to become more disciplined about our priorities. But here's what I invite you to consider. What if they're not four separate problems? What if they are four clues pointing towards the same thing? That's where stepping back matters, because patterns are difficult to recognize when you are looking at each individual piece. We often assume that because it's our business, we should be able to see everything that's happening and understand it. After all, who knows our business better than we do? But knowing more doesn't always mean seeing more clearly. Sometimes it means having more explanations, more history, more context. more reasons why things are the way they are. And occasionally, all of that knowledge makes it harder to ask the simplest question. What do I see when I look at my business as it exists today? Not what it was supposed to become, not what it was 5 years ago, not what worked before, not what I invested in before, but as it is today. What's happening now? Where's your energy going? What keeps demanding your attention? What are you consistently avoiding? What feels easier than it used to? And what feels more difficult? What are you excited to talk about? And what do you find yourself quietly wishing you didn't have to talk about that anymore? Those things can seem unrelated when you're experiencing them one at a time. But when you step back, sometimes they begin to form a very different picture. And that's what's becoming really clear to me. Sometimes we don't need more information about our business. We need a different way of looking at the information that our business is providing to us. That's a subtle difference because most experienced business owners usually aren't lacking information. The challenge is recognizing all those individual pieces and what are they telling you together? What is the big message? And that's why I keep coming back to patterns. A single moment of frustration may not mean very much. A single moment of frustration may not mean very much. A single offer you don't feel excited about may not be important. A week of marketing that feels difficult may not mean very much. But when those clues begin appearing in different parts of your business day after day, week after week, they're clamoring for your attention. Because that's when something larger may be trying to come into view. Your business is trying to tell you something. So perhaps this week, the question you can ask yourself isn't what's missing. A more important question would be, what might I be too close to see? There's an important difference between those two questions. One assumes you don't know enough. The other recognizes that sometimes clarity comes from seeing what you already know from a different perspective. So my invitation to you this week through my lens is sometimes experience gives us perspective. Sometimes proximity takes it away. And I think that's worth remembering. Because if you've been struggling to see clearly what comes next in the business that you've had for years, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need another answer. You might merely need a different vantage point, a different perspective. I'm Susan Bach, and thank you for spending a few minutes with me this week as we look at your business through a different lens. And until next week, remember that patterns always leave clues. Understanding the clues changes everything.